Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. Some time ago, I came across a true story by Deborah Davis, published in Guideposts. Deborah and her husband Bob had been on a dream vacation for 2 weeks in Europe, and now it was ending in Germany, and they arrived at Munich airport for their flight to Atlanta, where they would change for a flight to Shreveport, Louisiana. And they were looking forward to sleeping in their own bed again. But at the ticket counter, the clerk shook her head apologetically, explaining that there was no more availability on that flight. Deborah was upset, but Bob took the bad news more stoically. "We'll just have to get on the flight tomorrow," he said. "Let's enjoy the extra day." Slowly, Deborah came around. Bob's right, she thought. There were more important things to worry about. For instance, their son Joe was a first lieutenant in the Army, in the 82nd Airborne Division actually, serving in Baghdad. He was about to return to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for a few days for rest and recreation, though unfortunately there was no way that they could see him. Back at the hotel, they checked their email to see if their daughter-in-law, Monica, had any news regarding Joe and when he was due to arrive in the USA. Sure enough, there was a message. Joe had been delayed again, it read. Oh dear. The next morning, Bob and Deborah returned to Munich airport and managed to take the flight to Atlanta this time. But once there, tired after the long flight, they ran into problems once again as the upcoming flight to Shreveport was delayed by bad weather. Hours passed, and with the hours, so Deborah's frustration rose. "I just want to get home," she complained. Then her attitude changed as she watched a group of soldiers coming down a ramp from one of the gates. "They're coming back from war," she reminded herself. "I'm just coming back from a vacation. What right do I have to be frustrated?" She thought of her son, delayed in Iraq, and deprived of the brief home leave that he had earned and anticipated. Suddenly, Bob grabbed Deborah's arm. "Look at those soldiers coming down the ramp," he exclaimed. "I see them," she replied. Bob persisted. "Do you see who's in front?" Suddenly, all those delays made perfect sense. There he was. Deborah rushed headlong into the arms of her soldier son. Now, this incident reminded me of a Bible story. When Jacob was an old man, 130 years old to be exact, there was a famine in the land of Canaan, but food in Egypt. Jacob was disheartened because 20-something years previously, his other sons had given him Joseph's blood-stained coat of many colors to make Jacob believe that his son Joseph had died after being attacked by a wild animal. What neither the sons nor Jacob knew was that Joseph, whom his brothers had sold into slavery in Egypt, had become the prime minister and the administrator of Egypt's successful food distribution program. When Jacob sent 10 of his sons to Egypt to buy food, they did not recognize their brother Joseph in his royal regalia as he spoke to them through an interpreter. Testing whether he could now trust his brothers, Joseph kept Simeon hostage in Egypt until his brothers returned with son number 12, Benjamin. When Jacob heard the request for Benjamin, he explained, "Everything is against me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin?" Of course, this is a classic example of irony, where the full significance of a character's words are clear to the reader, though unknown to the character himself. We want to shout, "No, Jacob, no! Everything is not against you, it's for you. God is doing something very special for you." God was going to give Jacob the joy of discovering that Joseph was alive after all, and a man of great influence. God was going to provide Jacob's family with the food they needed and some of the best land in Egypt to raise their flocks. God was going to use Egypt as an incubator to form a nation. a nation he would call his chosen people, and one day established in the promised land. Sometimes we resemble Jacob. When things don't go our way, we have a tendency to fall into the everything is against me mindset. Deborah felt everything was against her due to the delays in Munich and Atlanta, but came to see it was God's way of giving her a chance to see her son, however briefly. Our God can turn bad news into good news. Let's trust him and watch him work in our life today. And thank you for tuning in once again to Village Church Connections.